Okay, so we're recording, but let's just take a second to warm up. Ah la 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 la. Sha la 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 la.
Hello there, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Adventures Through the Mind. I'm your host, as always, James W. Jesso. And if you are watching this on the YouTube, you will see that I am in my studio space. Typically, I record these intros outside or some other random environment of some type, but this is actually the last intro that will be shot in this space, and so I thought it would be good to honor the space by doing it here, and more on that in just a few moments. This episode is an interesting one. It's a bit different. Unlike being an interview between myself and another person, it's actually a conversation. I mean, mostly less myself and more the other people, but it's a conversation between four of us, including myself. And the others are Dr. Gerry, Kilindi Iyi, and Julian Palmer. These are all fairly intense psychedelic people, and what makes it even more intense and more special is that this was recorded on location in San Jose del Pacifico in the Oaxaca region of Mexico. Back in the summer of this year, I guess in the early springtime, I had this crazy opportunity randomly dropped on me by Dr. Gerry to go to Mexico to eat the Psilocybin mushrooms that grow wild up in the Zapotec Mountains. I'll be honest with you, I did not have the money to do this. I was really intimidated by the process. I didn't know how it was going to work, but it just so happened to be the exact length of time that I had open between events in my summer tour. So I said, fuck it, let's go. There's a pretty fun and interesting story around my experiences there, which I shared at a one-time event out in Calgary a few months ago. I was going to record that, but decided that I felt like it would be more meaningful if it only ever existed once. So you won't get to hear the story of my time there, but you do get this incredible recording between me, Julian, Gerry, and Kilindi talking about our experiences the night before with the what Dr. Gerry calls the Landslide Mushroom, what they up there call the Landslide Mushroom, which he will explain, but then also our experiences with mushrooms and psychedelics in general. This episode contains some pretty heavy metaphysical speculation, which will be an interesting contrast to the next episode, which will be with, and it's a bit of a surprise, but somebody who's getting very popular in the psychedelic culture for their, we'll say, very bold and critical statements of the psychedelic culture's metaphysics. So I am very excited to share this one with you. It is a pretty special recording, and I feel very, very lucky to have had the opportunity to participate and to thus share it with you. Before we jump in, I do want to communicate something with you. So a couple episodes back, I made the comment that I had some big changes were coming about and that I had a confession. Well, the confession is that many of you might not know this because I haven't been open about it, but I've been living in my parents' basement for the last 3 years. I mean, sometimes out of my parents' basement, but yeah, that's what I've been doing. It's the only way I've been able to produce this podcast, to keep writing, and to keep, I even rebuilt the website, keep producing videos. The only way I've been able to work full time on the content that y'all are getting to enjoy is because I've been living in my parents' basement, and they've been basically paying for me to live here. I don't have to pay rent, and I haven't needed to pay food, which has given me the capacity to invest myself into this content. So that's the confession. I'm not ashamed of it. I just wasn't really open about it. But here's the big changes. I realized that I can't continue to do this. There's a ceiling here. Like literally it's a low ceiling. I can touch it. It's a low ceiling. But also figuratively, there's a low ceiling for me. I hit it and I couldn't seem to get past it anymore. And so my decision has been, if I want to really take my career to the next level, if I want this writing, which is like the thing that I'm most impassioned by, as well as being able to do things like this podcast and to be able to produce YouTube videos, if I want to get there, if I want to do that, if I really want to achieve it, well, in order to achieve great things takes risk. And so I have decided, as of a few days past this podcast release, that I'm going to be moving into my own single bedroom apartment, which is way outside of my current income, to sort of to invite the economic instability that living at my parents' house just kept at bay. And to invite that in, to just light a fire under my ass and take me to the next level into my career, to forge a new sense of who I am and what I can create. In order for me to achieve this goal, I've got a lofty goal set. I think I'm feeling like it's pretty epic. In order for me to do it, I need to work full time on it. And I can't work full time on it unless I'm getting a full time income. So Patreon. You've heard me say it before. I have just switched over my Patreon from per episode of the podcast to per month, and I've completely revamped it with new rewards and new pledge levels and new goals, and I'm feeling really proud of it. And I'm also feeling really anxious and excited about whether or not I will be able to meet this great challenge with success, though I do believe that I can, and I believe that I can because I believe in the community, people like yourself, to support me in doing it. So please take a moment after this podcast is done, obviously, because it's going to be great. Or even right now, you can pause it and jump over to patreon.com/James W. Jesso, Jesso, or check out the link that is in the description for this episode, be it in the YouTube description, on the actual page on jameswjesso.com, or on your podcast app. There should be a link in there somewhere. Please do. I really believe that we can do this together. I really believe that I can do this incredibly challenging and intimidating thing, and that in the process can really forward and better this content that you've been enjoying with your help. So thanks for sitting through that long preamble. Please enjoy this.
All right, so we're hanging out here in Mexico, in San Jose del Pacifico, up in the mountains near Oaxaca. I'm hanging out here with, you guys can say your names.
Julian Palmer.
Dr. Gerry.
Kilindi Iyi.
And we all came up here to experience the Landslide Mushrooms, which Dr. Gerry is going to give us a heads up on what that's all about.
Well, we're actually, just like James said, we're on the summit of the Southern Sierra Mountains. We're over 10,000 feet above sea level. The community is San Jose del Pacifico, and it's renowned for its magical mushrooms. We are in Zapotec land, and within these mountains, the most famous mushroom around here is the Psilocybe cerulescens, Zapotecorum, Aztecorum, and Mazatecorum. These are all the varieties of the species that people come here to consume. To the locals, to the ancient Zapotecs, this was called Teonanacatl, which means flesh of the gods. It's an Aztec word derived, but since the Zapotecs paid tribute to the Aztecs, so it remained. No? So we are in the land of Teonanacatl, which Western civilization called these mushrooms landslide mushrooms because they grow right there, right where the earth opens up, right deep down there in the landslide. That's where they grow. And wow.
Great, yeah, good start. It's also a pretty free-form conversation as it unfolds. So, what did you guys think? So, Julian and Kilindi, you guys are both fairly experienced with the mushrooms. What did you guys think of your encounters with the landslide?
Well, this is Kilindi talking. I first encountered the landslide mushroom back in 1974. A friend of mine who had been coming here since 1970 brought these particular mushrooms back, and they have the Olmec, Toltec, Aztec signature to them, and first encountering them and communing with the ancient elders of this land, it was kind of a regathering of those ancestors a couple of nights ago when we took the mushrooms and they descended into the room and and greeted me. So it's been an experience. It's been like a full circle because these were the first pure and true mushrooms that I experienced back in 1974. So it's kind of like full circle. I took the mushrooms and they ultimately brought me back around to where they grow so that we could again greet one another. So it's a particularly special mushroom to me, and it's the food of the gods. It's the flesh of the gods. It gives you access to the hyperdimensional, extra-dimensional, interdimensional realms of existence inside of the multiverse, and it's the one that gives you access. And that's all the mushrooms around the world are great, and this is a special one to me.
Well, my experience of these mushrooms was they were very different to other mushrooms that I've had, and we've talked about this earlier. I think that pretty much everyone I know who takes mushrooms, who's into mushrooms, experiences these mushrooms, all the different mushrooms in different parts of the world, as being completely different story, completely different type of experience. And my experience with these mushrooms was that I felt they were very much curated by the spirit of the mushroom, who appeared to me as a kind of like a charming middle-aged lady who
Wow.
she and I entered into her domain, into her world, and all the spirits that I met there, they were guests in her house, and they had to behave. And that's very much the impression I had. So I felt the experience was very, we did it in a group. There wasn't any curandero or shaman there. I felt the experience was very held, was very solid, and that the mushroom spirit, I'm not sure what I would call her, or she didn't say call me anything, she just said this is who I am, hey, how you going? It felt like she was really calling the shots, and I felt that she was a very wise medicine woman doing wise medicine woman work. So I have met, what would you call it, the Dave or the spirit of various species of mushrooms before, and that's how I would account for the difference in qualities, because you're dealing with an entirely different kind of
Wait,
spirit.
pause. I'm going to get you to repeat that because this sound of the
Yeah.
helicopter
It's just going to take over
is going to
everything.
totally destroy what you're
Alright.
saying, so we have to wait till it passes.
Does everyone claim that they have the strongest mushrooms on the planet?
Oh, well, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything as the strongest mushrooms. For me, these mushrooms weren't that strong. I did 2 leaves, and I was thinking...
Well, you were supposed to eat 3 leaves now.
Really?
Nonetheless.
3? I probably should have eaten 3 or 4. I would have... I don't know if it's about strong with any compound, especially you're dealing with mushrooms or DMT. It's not about strong, it's about the dimensions and the qualities and the flavors and what it allows you access to. And I think the advantage of this mushroom that I perceived was that it felt solid, it felt grounded, it felt like really, you're being really held by the spirit of the mushroom. And yeah, the visuals were pretty good, and yeah,
Very
I
distinctive
enjoyed it.
Aztec
Very.
patterns.
I didn't get the patterns, but I got the sort of Olmec Toltec those curves and the shapes and the qualities of the art. That
I
art,
see that in my mind.
you know, yeah. So in terms of mushrooms in general, I think anyone who takes mushrooms from different parts of the world experiences the different qualities and textures and the different the way that it looks, the things that happen to you. It's all completely different, and I don't account this to any specific different chemicals or compounds, because it's largely psilocin or psilocybin. I put it down to the different spiritual qualities of the mushroom, not the chemical. Because what you're having a spiritual experience. Why would the chemical just, okay, it's psilocybin, or it should be the same experience throughout all mushrooms? It doesn't make any sense. What you're dealing with are completely different species that look completely different in different parts of the world. It would make sense you have completely different experiences. And that's what pretty much all explorers of mushrooms around the world say.
Well, the thing is that they all have a different signature, and the mushrooms, in my humble opinion, are what built the different cultures out of their plenum of information. It's like the Olmec, Toltec, Aztec civilization that was built here was built from the mushrooms. And if you go to Angkor Wat, that whole Proto-Indian Soma type of vibe, you'll have that because it built Angkor Wat. And if you go to Thailand, same thing. If you go to places in Africa, the Zulu mushrooms or the northern African mushrooms will give you that whole Kemetic Egyptian vibe. So they all have their signatures, and as you get higher, they really start to diverge and become really distinct. And as far as this mushroom, I don't see any of the mushrooms that I've experienced as a female spirit. I think the female spirit that we experienced basically last night or the night before was Maria Sabina singing, and her spiritual inclusion into the trip, because that's really what brought about the informational structure that produced us being here, the rest of the world really getting into mushrooms and things like that. So she got her hand on these particular mushrooms in this particular area. I really see, as people talk about ayahuasca and they talk about Mother Ayahuasca, I see the mushroom as more male. And then I seen all those jaguar knights and feathered serpents and all that kind of stuff descend into the room. So
now that you mentioned that,
I look at it in a little different way.
Here, like locally, the mushroom is called the grandfather. Mm-hmm. And that's why he punishes you. Like, there is a very common, when someone is having a bad trip on mushrooms, the expression is te están regañando, which means they are punishing you for what you did. And there is definitely a relationship between Landslide Mushroom and the grandfather, because he will tell you exactly what you did, and he might hit you on the head and stuff. But definitely, there's this report, and also like the phallic symbol of the mushroom.
And it's the thunder. It's a thunder.
And there is an intimate relationship between the lightning, the thunder, and this landslide mushroom for sure. Once on a journey, the mushroom revealed to me that this mycelium thrives here because of the minerals that are in these mountains, but basically they depend on the lightning and on the thunder. So there is this old male.
The elevation, the clouds.
Yep.
All of that, which makes it special to this place.
I didn't notice like a male or a female energy specifically so much as almost like a non-gendered or transgendered plurality in the presence, where it felt like I was interacting with just like an intelligence of a whole species that didn't show up necessarily as male or female at any given, like in totality, but at any given time I felt like I was feeling more of a male energy or more of a female energy from time to time. Also, I found that these mushrooms were for sure the strongest mushroom experience I'd ever had. Like I definitely have not dosed that high. It was very strong, and it really exposed to me the truth behind saying that mushrooms can be as strong as ayahuasca. Or that mushroom, like ayahuasca, isn't the end all and be all. That like mushrooms can really take us there too, and that really is what it felt like for me, as strong as an immersive experience as my experiences with ayahuasca. But also, again, my largest experience yet, very very visual. I had my own like process that I was going through at one point, just like some fear process, and also a total surrender to death at one point too, which was really cool. And yeah, very very strong. Gerry, you've been eating these mushrooms, like these are the ones that you first ate, right? Like this is your...
Well, these were the strongest mushrooms I ate. My first experience was with Cubensis,
Okay.
when I was really, really young, like 14 years old. But the first time I came here, I was turning 18 years old, and I ate 25 grams approximately, that potency.
Mm-hmm.
34 fresh, medium-sized landslide mushrooms. And yeah, I was exposed to death. So I came from defeating death and encountering eternity. And yeah, I've been eating these mushrooms. It's very compatible with my nature. The more I eat, it just feels like I'm born for these mushrooms. You know? I feel safe with them. And the more I eat, the more knowledge, the more responsibility. And yeah.
Well, something I wanted to say, and you know, the ayahuasca folks always get on me. Mushrooms taught the people how to make ayahuasca. The mushrooms are an older plenum of information than the plants. Even on Earth, they're 465 million years older than any plant that has ever been on Earth. They have more information. They're more powerful. Ayahuasca is wonderful compound. It's beautiful. It's part of the medicine of this earth. But the mushrooms go beyond this earth, beyond this universe, through dimensions and all of that. Ayahuasca.
It's very earthly.
It's very earthly. It's not. It won't take you where the mushrooms take you.
Exactly, I agree with you.
The mushrooms are an organic,
definitely more strong.
Artificial intelligence created by something somewhere from gajillions of years ago. And this is, this is what I'm saying, that the mushrooms still are the quintessential hallucinogen that we have access to, and it will give you access to all of the other things in all of the other places, and it will deliver any experience, any of the other hallucinogens on Earth give you at specific doses. It'll take you where the toad takes you. It'll take you where the Tora takes you. It'll take you where ayahuasca takes you, and it'll take you beyond those places. Now, you don't have to believe me. Just dose up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and like up the dose too.
Yeah. Dose up.
Julian, at some point we had to cut the audio from what you were saying because of a helicopter going by. But you were talking about having met the Deva, or the spirit of the mushroom. Can you expand a little bit on that premise? Maybe talking specifically about the mushrooms, but maybe just like
about the Deva.
Yeah.
Well, the Deva is like the spirit of a plant, which is the overlighting spiritual being, who is the who is the manifest expression that you can communicate with from a plant or a mushroom. And I guess the form that it appears in isn't significant. It's that you are experiencing that communication. So it's quite interesting. If people are interested in Devas, probably the most relevant resource is the Finhorn. Have you heard about Finhorn?
No.
In Scotland, they started communicating with the Devas from their fruits and vegetables that they were growing in northern Scotland, and were growing these unheard of, massive vegetables, and were the plants and vegetables told them how to grow them.
Actually, you know what? I have heard of the Finhorn. I have a friend of mine, now that you're explaining it, that that did some sort of apprenticeship or a course there.
Up to what point are these deities or entities part of our projections of our mind, of our own duality, in a way that a source gets to us on a personal level and it uses our own duality to manifest?
Well, say if you smoke salvia, for instance. When I smoke salvia, I talk to the deva of salvia. And for me, that's self-evident. I don't consider it to be any kind of manifestation of my mind or consciousness. It's just a self-evident.
Because people ask me, like, Gerry, does the toad have an entity? Like, do you talk with is it an ally, like a spiritual ally? And I think toad, like, the uniqueness of this medicine is that you do not dwell in duality. It gives you to this non-dual space, which people, resonate with God, source, everything, the all being. And in that space, there's no entities, because this is where everything is deriving from.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it depends. Say with the Australian acacias, sometimes you may be communicating with the deva of the acacia, and sometimes you'll be way beyond that. It just depends how much you take.
Dose dependent.
Dose and where you're at and whatever's happening at the time. However the cards fall. In terms of the experience.
My thoughts on this are that definitely I think it's ignorant and narrow-minded and insular to think that humans are the only things that have intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
And that if we were to merge with a plant, I mean, it wouldn't even have to be a highly psychoactive plant. All plants speak when we consume them. They speak to us in some way. Even if we were to take it to a very physical level, that our immune system is directly communicating with the nutritional profile of the plant. But all plants speak. Some plants just happen to speak much louder and have a greater intelligence. And that it's totally possible for us to engage in that. And also that's an expression of our own duality in the manner in which it manifests visually, experientially, is a direct expression of our own inner psyche connecting with the, say, collective unconscious, like the larger human mind. And then beyond that, the mind, like mind itself, mind at large, all of this is just sort of a fractured expression, a fractaled expression of mind at large, engaging in a duality onto itself. And so at some point you would transcend all of it and enter into what would be truth with a capital T, which is an experiential presence to reality with a capital R, which is not duality at all. But anything below that would be some sort of a dualistic exchange, which is an expression of our own selves, but also an expression of something, or our own independent I, or me-ness, but also an expression of something trans me-ness, transpersonal as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Kilindi, you want to weigh in on this topic?
Well, there is a oneness that is evident on certain levels, but there are also standalone systems that are not hooked to anything else. We try to say, everything, when we get down to it, we're all one and
we're all
the
connected.
universe is one, we're all connected, but that's not my experience. There are plenums of information and states of beingness that are so exotic, so different, so far away from what we conceive of, that they're totally separate from everything else. And that is, that's self-evident in certain areas of existence and understanding as far as consciousness is concerned. We're still looking at it and trying to express it in human terms and through human language. And in reality, we still haven't breached the levels of understanding to be able to make rational decisions on what this thing is about, because at this point, nobody knows. We're just grasping at the straws that are there for us to be able to grasp to. But this thing is so big and so large and so deep and so profound that the only way that we can access and be able to stand and look at these things. My lectures, my last few lectures have been on SEPI. We know what SETI is, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, but what I've been talking about is the search for infraparticle intelligence. In other words, intelligence in the subatomic realms below what we have as far as the ability to postulate through higher mathematics and things like that, below the Planck length, into the realm and land of darkness. Triple thick darkness. Why triple thick darkness? Because it's the intelligence I'm talking about are smaller than the photon. So you're in a darkness where
And photon is a light particle.
the light particle. You're in a darkness that is beyond. That is below where light exists. No light exists there at all. You have nothing but pure consciousness, and inside of that, the intelligences that create the universe and the multiverse that we exist in are created from those very, very small intelligences, but they're so small, they're so vast, they're larger than everything that's in the macro world, but yet they're small. So
do they have a name, like dark tones instead of photons?
No, the ancients just said the triple thick darkness.
Triple thick darkness. Wow.
That's what in ancient Egypt, Osiris or Ansar was called Lord of the Underworld or Lord of the Perfect Black. The triple thick darkness, from where the everything stems from, and at this time we don't have any human technology that can access it other than these mushrooms and the human mind, body, spirit, consciousness creation or construct. That's the only way we have access to it. And what I've been trying to do is to break into those areas, and I've broken through in the midst of a puzzle, in the midst of a battle where a challenge I accepted to be able to breach a particular puzzle. And when I came out of it, I was in one of those realms. And that's how I've been trying to convey through words what this realm is. And of course I can't, I fall short, but they're just standalone systems that aren't part of the one. The one is for this construct, for this reality, for this universe. Right. There are things that stand apart and above and beyond what we think of. So
this is what you mean by the multiverse? Is like
the multiverse is just different universes that inhabit close to the universe that we exist in.
And like each one would have their own one, like
their own physics. You can have universes that are connected, that blend together, that that have the ability to be able to cross over into one another. But those are macro universes that are like ours, just different in certain configurations. Maybe the physics is different. Maybe you don't walk on the ground. Maybe you float. Whatever. I don't know. You could postulate a trillion different things because the possibilities are endless inside of that. But the plenums of information that generate the universes in the multiverse are in the very, 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 very small. Because what they're saying is that when a civilization becomes truly a super civilization, higher civilization, they miniaturize themselves because the ability to be able to have a greater density of information is much greater in the smaller particles than it is in the macro particles. It's generating what we see and what we do. And they're superpositioning everything that exists at the same time. They know where every atom is, every leaf that falls, every butterfly that flies, every time you cough, when you go to the bathroom, it is in contact with all of that, feeding information back into those, for lack of a better word, super servers, super intelligences. So, we every time we think we know we have it and we got it or we're close to it, we're nowhere near. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're nowhere near.
So maybe I'll throw this like a
question that what you said sort of brought up for me to you guys here too about making sense of the psychedelic experience, and maybe if you guys can check in with your own perspectives on the nature of reality and what the psychedelic experience has sort of offered to you as your perspectives on what this whole game is all about.
Well, I definitely don't know what it's about. I'm the first to say that I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. All I know is I keep putting one foot in front of the other, and that's why I don't say I'm a scholar or a scientist or anything like that. I'm a warrior and an adventurer and an explorer. So as you go off into an exploration, you don't have you don't know when you're in a informational source and you don't know where you're going. You're just out on the boat on the ocean, going forward, and you're discovering as you go. You discover this island, you discover that island, you meet new people, you find out new things. You may find go to an island and find breadfruit, or you may go to an island and find out where oranges are. It's the same thing in your exploration of consciousness. We're feeding information into the central computers, but we're also creating as we explore. We're creating the things that we explore, and we're experiencing the things that we explore. So my thing is that a lot of things that I experience on the mushrooms and DMT and other things, they don't have any bring back the human, help save the world type of things to them. They're just for the ability to be able to explore, to be able to know, to be able to ultimately become more. Because my goal is to become more than a human. It's not to drag the world into something in the future. My goal is to not be on Earth and not be in the human, but to be unbound, to be a true sovereign in the multiverse, to be able to do that which you see as good and what you want to do, not to bring back a new way to power light bulbs, or to be able to deal with a new faster car or anything like that. That's not my goal. And the things that I see and I experience, you can't put in the human, you can't put in this world anyway. The beings that I encounter, they're as far away from this as you are from, not that ants are intelligent, but just the difference between a human being and an ant. And ants are highly intelligent, but I'm just trying to make a point in that, these things aren't for the earth. They're for us to make ourselves more, to be more than human, to be what we are in the future. So a lot of times people say, well, what do you bring back in integration and all that? I don't bring back nothing. I'm not integrating nothing. I'm trying to hack the code of the physics of this reality so that I don't have to exist here anymore. I don't want to be able to have to breathe air. I don't want to have to be able to, if I want something, I want it to be there. If I want to go someplace, I want to be there. So that's my goal. Is of course I'm a conservationist for the earth and things like that. I think the earth, of course, is a living being, and that we're part of that construct. But my thing is to become more than human.
Wow. Well, in my case, entheogens have been the true pillar, the true cornerstone of my spirituality. It was through them that I woke into life and realized of my divine nature. Even though I was raised as a Catholic, for me, this has been a huge spiritual journey into finding God within myself and finding God everywhere, like in every single living being and the non-living, and acknowledging this awareness that is aware also of me has turned my life into pure magic. Like my will is unconditional, and it's getting me. I can see that I am marching towards a common end, and I can see that the pace is getting like faster and faster. Things are moving at a faster pace, but personally, it's just a journey towards God. Like it's yeah. In my case, I'm a wounded healer, and it's just to acknowledge the spiritual world, that even though we don't see it on a daily basis, it's real, it exists, and there is more than what the eye can see, for sure. So it has been through entheogens, and they are the most sacred molecules, substances that I have encountered in my life.
So I'd say something very similar to Gerry. I think that the psychedelics will show you that there's much more to reality than you have been conditioned to believe. And as Kilindi talks about the multiverse and the great expanse, and really the infinite ecology of creation, I think this really puts one's life in perspective. And I suppose through taking psychedelics, I've learned a lot of things about what it is to be human and the human potential, and also having an understanding of how human beings can be, and how life can be, and how I can be in my life as well, how I can live my life. And I think that psychedelics have encouraged me to have a more sort of YOLO approach, rather than not sort of a throwaway, trivial, I'm going to throw myself into the thorn bushes just because I can. But, okay, well, let's take the bull by the horns and do this thing, because, all right, this is our chance, and we've got to be serious about it, and we've got to be lighthearted about it and have fun at the same time.
Plant medicines teach us the right way to live, and have also helped to lose fear, which I think that's, at the end of the day, the worst disease that humans suffer. Coming from the Aztec Mexican lineage, they teach from a young age that you should never be afraid of anything, and that being afraid was the worst disease that you could be infected with. And in a human condition, I think the fear of death, it's one of the most horrific, singularities that that we think we're about to experience. But it has been through entheogens that I have lost this fear of dying. And
me too.
And I'm trying to be more loving and compassionate and kind, not only to myself but to my siblings and to my surroundings. So I think we have to do the entheogenic homework. No, after seeing the visions, we have not maybe to bring a pearl from those dimensions, like you said, Kilindi, but we're infused with this huge sense of responsibility because we have seen how things move. And I've seen people who, reach out to entheogens like on a very constant mode, and they stop seeing visions, and they even ask like why they're chasing like a dragon, and we have to be living gods in this reality, the judge begins at his home, to be a good judge. So I think it's discernment. That's all I'm gonna add.
And don't get me wrong that just because I say that I'm searching for the more, that it doesn't help to make you a better person, because it does. It gives you insight into things, that there's more to our reality than just what we see in the regular three-dimensional 5 sense sort of program. So it makes you a better person. And as Dr. Gerry said, it takes away the fear of death. You understand that the only impossible thing in the universe is for you to die. You may change channels on your TV set, but you're gonna be here wherever you are. You're still gonna be here because you take here with you. Here follows you wherever you go. You can be on the moon someplace out in space, you're still going to be here because wherever you are, you're here. So it takes away that fear of death. It takes away that fear. And the secret to life in this dimension is to have no fear of death. That way you can move energetically. That way you can move boldly. And it gives you a better way of relating to the earth. And I know people talk about Carlos Castaneda and they say, well, he made it all up and, there was no Don Juan and all that kind of stuff. Maybe. Doesn't matter.
Exactly.
What he said is exactly the way that shit is. I don't care.
Kilindi.
Maybe not exactly.
I don't know. Well, I mean, nothing exactly, but the old sorcerers and things like that. That's the way that stuff works, and so that's my 2 cents on it.
Maybe I'd like to check in on this. I totally find myself agreeing with each of you on various degrees, for sure. For myself, the psychedelics have been an opportunity to find a truly authentic sense of spiritual relationship to God, although it's still somewhat turbulent for myself in my own agnostic, hyper-intellectualized journey. It also has given me opportunity to consider and experience and push beyond the human into other experiences that completely transcend what I had previously been conditioned to believe is possible and real. And it's also helped me just get a better perspective on who I am and how I want to show up in this world, and decondition myself, either decondition my negative experiences or decondition the societal perspectives, and just open me up into a more broad range opinion of things. An opinion of myself, really expanding my sense of self and sense of the world. And oftentimes I have had really negative experiences, especially around the sense of the fear of death. That's still something that, in fact, psychedelics taught me to acknowledge that I had a fear of death. Where previously I had this weird reverse heroism, where it's you know what, we're all going to die, fuck it, doesn't matter. There's no reason to be afraid, but it really helped me understand how much tenderness and pain and fear there is in the dying experience, and allowed me to slowly, though I'm not there yet, become increasingly more courageous about facing it, because at least now I could acknowledge that there was fear there rather than pretending that it wasn't, or hiding from the vulnerable reality that there was fear there. But generally, the psychedelics have exposed me to all sorts of weird, uncomfortable, and blissful and perfectly sensical experiences that each time has offered me a new perspective on how to engage who I am and the world around me on various levels. And especially because we were talking about there being plenums of information in the mushrooms, the landslides, one of the things that I really took away was that there was such profound, deep knowledge in these mushrooms, and that it was a knowledge beyond the earth for sure, but also it was a knowledge that felt like I was communing with the intelligence of this entire region, and that I had only tasted it. I'd only tasted the flavor wafting on the wind as it passed me, that there was just so much more knowledge present there, and also definitely exposed me to the possibilities of high dose experiences, because like I said, I haven't dosed that high before.
Well, just keep on. We'll get you around there soon.
Yeah. Thanks for welcoming me into the high dose experience, guys.
Because on the last podcast, you were like, I don't have any reason to do any high doses. I'm just, listening to you, Kilindi.
Yeah.
Put you on the podcast, but I'm not there with it. So you inch closer and closer to it. So
I keep hanging out with you guys. Jesus. Hey, actually, since I just talked about the landslides, Gerry, maybe you can get into the current ecological instability so that people don't listen to this and go, whoa, let's all head to Mexico and eat these mushrooms. There's a problem right now with them being endangered, yeah?
Well, sadly, just like any other parts where there's plant medicines, there is an increase like specifically talking about these mountains, it's known that there is an deforestation process going on. And sadly, like in the northern mountains of Huautla de Jimenez, where Maria Sabina used to work and live, now there's hardly any mushrooms there. And they have basically deforested the whole Chicon Nindo mountain. The Chicon Nindo is the sacred mountain of the Mazatecs. And even though the ancients told them, do not profanate this mountain, they built it a highway directly to Huautla. And of course, like we've seen now, the Mazatecs have to come here to Zapoteclan to buy mushrooms to supply the demand up in Huautla. And sadly, here we've seen, every year I've seen more and more deforestation. So there is only a limited amount of medicine, and I've seen this human impulse of no, we have to get it all, and we have to. So it's a sad response. Although I do believe this mycelium is extremely intelligent, and I don't know. It would seem like oh yeah, there's not going to be mushrooms, and I feared for that. When I was 15 years old, I was like, well, that's why I moved up here. I was like, well, I want to eat them before they run out.
Right.
So I moved up here. But at the end, you see the mycelium. I think more than 70% of the landslide mushrooms gets claimed back by the earth. So I don't know. People ask me, what's a ritual? Is there a ritual? Just come here to San Jose del Pacifico and have the courage to look at the one and only mirror, with the landslide mushrooms.
So here's another question. I don't know if we've already addressed it, but maybe you guys could go into the different varieties of mushrooms that you've experienced, and if you found any noticeable nuances between them. So I get a lot of questions fairly often, I imagine you guys do too, about whether or not I had a favorite strain of mushrooms, or if I notice a difference in each different one. I'm not sure where the question is in that statement, but maybe you guys want to go into that a little bit.
Well, I think we said that each mushroom has its own signature.
Yeah.
And, they all, and especially for me, at low doses, they all kind of the same, because you just kind of got some fractals, and you get some whirligigs, and you think divergently, and different things like that. But as you get into higher doses, they diverge into their own personalities, and those personalities are what we talked about earlier. Just like the mushrooms here, they're the informational structure of that Olmec, pyramid of the sun, that type of energy. So they all have their, I can't get any type of Mexican mushroom and not get that whole signature,
Yes.
So it is with the rest of them. You get the Australian mushrooms, they have their signature. They're going to do that dreamtime thing, and so on and so forth. So, if you get them from, Thailand, you're going to get that energy. So they all have their personalities, yeah.
Yeah, I started with Cubensis first, and I thought, okay, yes, they're giggling, and among different varieties of Cubensis, I saw that, for example, I'm originally from Guadalajara, Jalisco, and we were very close to San Isidro, Mazatepec, which is the land of the Mazatepec mushroom, and that was more like a giggling mushroom. And then the ones from Palenque, they had more of a visual component. Curiously, we were analyzing the landslide mushroom. We were like experimenting, just eating caps, and then we were eating stems, and we saw that there were more visuals on the caps and more sensations on the stems. I saw that observation, but personally, I've only tried Cubensis, the ones from the Alps, the Semilanciata, the Cyanescens and Azurescens from Washington State, and I tried some in Nepal from elephant dung. And personally, landslide mushrooms are the strongest for me, and the ones that take me faster to where the toad takes me, like this non-dual state. So personally, these are the most entheogenic mushrooms I've encountered, with definitely the Aztec Toltec signature on them, for sure.
Well, I first started out with Cubensis mushrooms, which are growing on cow shit in Australia, and I found the Cubensis, relatively consistent, relatively similar. With some of the cultivated Cubensis, I found a greater clarity with than the ones that grow on cow shit. And I've tried the azurescents, I've tried the ones that grow in Scandinavia. What do they call them? The
Semilancetta. Well,
Semilancetta.
and they have also a white mushroom, which the berserk tribe would eat them. That's why the saying "don't go berserk."
Oh, yep.
It's a white mushroom that grows on the grasslands, and
Yep.
it's not Semilancetta.
Right.
That's an interesting mushroom.
And in Australia, there's also the suborganosa ones, the wood-loving ones, and there's other species of wood-loving mushrooms that grow in winter in the far north coast of New South Wales, and no one even knows the ID of these mushrooms. But pretty much no one takes them because not many people know where to find them. And I've had my most startling experiences with those mushrooms. There seems to be a certain kind of purity. There's almost a wildness because you're taking them and pretty much you're guaranteed there's no one else taking them at the same time. So you're having this full intercommunion with the deva is giving you their total attention. So that's been by far my most profound experiences with those mushrooms.
Wow.
The most visual of any entheogen.
Really?
Those mushrooms.
I started, well, I don't really know what I started with because I just started with whatever mushrooms came in the bag from the dealer, which I assume were just Cubensis when I was 16. But I've tried a variety now, like these landslide mushrooms. These were definitely, again, I couldn't really say if they were the strongest mushrooms because they were the strongest dose, but they were the ones that most felt like I was on a full dose of DMT all night, essentially. That's what it felt like. But I've also tried the cultivated strains of Mexicana, Mazitepic, Amazonia. In Canada, I've tried oh wow, my memory's not there. I know that Selanunciata grows there, and I haven't had those. What was the other one you just mentioned grows in Washington?
Cyanescence.
Cyanescence, yes. Cyanescence I've tried, which were very strong and very nice. And each one felt very different. I've had them in Thailand as well. I assume that they were from elephant dung. Those were very beautiful, very profound, but also very gentle. But the strangest experience... Oh, I've also had them in Australia too. I don't know what varieties were because I was just kind of like just like load me up, sure, kind of thing. And they came in caps. And I had one variety that I had like 6 or 7 caps. I was like, yeah, this is great. And another variety where I had one and I was in a room and it was dark and all I could see were visions. And my friend said something to me, and I don't know what she said because every time she opened her mouth, like fractal light was just streaming out of her eyes and mouth. So that was also, whatever mushroom that was, I'd like to try again. But the strangest experience I had was actually with something called Great White Monsters. Have you guys heard of those?
No.
The story around it is that they're an albino Cubensis that were made by like a mistake in the lab, and it like permanently altered their genetics. And I'm not sure what elements of like psychological priming there might be, but I had an experience with them, and I thought to myself like, whoa, this is really weird. I was with a friend of mine, and I was taking her on her first like more spiritually oriented psilocybin experience, and at some point I was like, what is going on? There was just like fangs and darkness, almost like the reality of the vampire. And I had gone into this sort of shamanic vision of trying to ask the mushroom what was happening. And I had gone into a space where I just like saw this like withered up, like monstrous contorted being. And it was the spirit of the mushroom that's like, don't look at me. And I was like, oh shit. And I came to it. I grabbed my friend. I'm like, this is not our medicine. We need to get out of here. And throughout the whole night, I was cursing and I wanted to smash cars and rob houses, and we were just like being ignorant and fucking mean and stuff. And it was fun. It was really fun. But that was strange. And also I've tried a variety called Penis Envy, which are also sort of like specifically bred. Their caps don't open, so they all sort of look like penises. And those are very, very strong. Definitely different feel than the landslides for sure. But yeah, unrelentingly strong. We're just a couple grams
like just 2 grams once completely floored me. But yeah, those are the varieties that I've had. Each one definitely a totally different personality, different feel. And like Julian was saying, it can't just be the psilocybin or whatever, the alkaloids, whatever maybe variety that they have cysteine might play, this third alkaloid. There's something more. There's some sort of signature, some sort of intelligence that's sewn in that, like the hard problem of consciousness dictates, we can't observe the physical parameters of the mushroom and determine the subjective nuances from that alone. It just doesn't work. Anything else? You guys want to like? Is there any? Okay, I got one final question then. Since we're all here, maybe just any piece of advice for dosing entheogenic doses of psychedelic mushrooms. Like, I often talk about not like the entheogenic dose, but like the psychodynamic personal work kind of doses. Do you guys, since you're all very experienced with these high doses, do you have any advice?
Cutoff point? Or
What's that?
like a cutoff point?
No, just like a final statement, which is like, do you have any advice for anyone who's looking to up their dose, basically?
Well, be responsible. You don't have to rush it. You can go incrementally. You don't have to start out high. You can start low and go up over time. It's not a rush. It's not about being or taking more. To say that you're taking more or to take more than somebody else.
Not a competition.
You know, everybody is going to find their own bed to lie in. So that's my advice. You know, it's not a rush. This is a learning session, a school of knowledge and information. And, you know, when you go to college, you don't start out in the PhD program. You start out in the undergrad and you work your way up over a period of a few years. And it's the same thing here. You want to be able to, and then there's no, you don't have any guarantees, you know, because each mushroom you encounter is going to be different. Each trip will have parts of it that are different, and you'll have parts that are the same. So be responsible, go slow. You don't have to rush. That's my advice.
Yeah, I agree with Kilindi. In terms of dosage, I think it's useful to understand that, you know, different mushrooms are different strength. And you can have 5 grams of some mushrooms that are like 1 gram of another mushrooms. Exactly. So, you know, people can get caught up in a bit in terms of the grammage of the mushrooms. And different people will have a different response to the higher doses depending where they're at. I know with my work with ayahuasca and taking the acacia, that the more that I take the less that I need. And other people I know as well that you need less to go further. So actually I don't have that much experience pushing plus 10 dried grams. When I was first starting with the mushrooms, I would just chop up a whole bunch and sort of fill them on a whole plate and just eat as much as I could. And often I would probably take too much because I would black out. And when you're blacking out and you don't remember, that's too much. That's the same with DMT and any other tryptamines.
Definitely.
Yeah, you wanna come back.
You want to be aware
before that point. Yeah, definitely. And also sometimes with the tryptamines, you can take, especially I know with ayahuasca, because I have more experience with that you can take so much that it can get a bit. You can spin out a bit. You can kind of lose control of the vehicle. So yeah, I certainly am interested in pushing the dose and doing more high dose mushrooms in the future. Yeah, I think it's something a very interesting exploration. And yeah, but a lot of people may underestimate the power and the ramifications of what they might experience. So you got to have great respect and take great care if you're going to do this, I think.
I would say that each and every one of us has a unique neuro-brain chemistry, and cada cabeza es un mundo. Each head is a world by itself. Each person has their own unique minimum and effective dose. I agree with everything that's been laid out here. We should start with huge respect and low doses and small moves. And the mushroom will tell you, just have, shush that inner voice and listen.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your knowledge, and thank you for sharing this experience with me. Gerry, thank you for having me out here in Mexico. It's been really incredible. Kilindi, Julian, it's been great to see you guys again. It's been a really incredible trip. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
And I'd like to, on tape, thank Dr. Gerry for having me as a guest this week. Appreciate it, and we're going to do things in the future.
Absolutely. I can't wait. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, James. Thank you, Kilindi, for making this happen. My heart is just so filled with joy and light, and until our next encounter.
Take care.
Take care. Shine on.
Well, that is it for this episode of the podcast. They release every other Friday. I'm very grateful to Gerry, Kilindi, and Julian for being able to share that experience with you guys. So if you're listening, thank you very much for sharing that with me. And Gerry, thank you so much for inviting me to come down. It was a truly incredible experience, and definitely shifted some things really positively for me. To the listeners of the show, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this all the way through the end. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, please subscribe, be it YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you are enjoying this content, you can subscribe to make sure you keep getting more of this content. Also, as you heard me mention at the beginning, I am about to do something super intimidating and really incredible, and move into my own place. And in order to do so and to continue to work on the show, I need to really increase my patronage funding, my Patreon funding. So please, if you're caring for the show and you're enjoying the content, or you care about what I'm doing, or you're just like, God damn, that is a lofty, lofty goal. I respect that kind of courage. Sure, I'll give you what I can. Then head to patreon.com/James Jesso and do that. That's it for now. I will see you on the next episode of Adventures Through the Mind. Take care.